Hi guys, I'm amydoesthings and so are you. As it's the final week of NaNoWriMo, that's National Novel Writing Month, or November if you're a normal person, I thought I'd talk a bit about it, share my own writing process and give a cheer along to anyone who's nearly at the finish line. So who am I to talk about writing? Well, I've done a fair bit of the academic stuff for my A-levels and at Oxford, and since I'm a linguist in a literature degree, I do a lot of thinking about the mechanics of language and the conventions of literature, but more importantly, I write a lot of fiction. Some of it is personal, some of it I share online, some I may like to publish someday, some I'm already publishing in my Monday series on YouTube in a sketch format. I tend to enjoy writing comedy and horror, and on one site I have nearly 3,000 total likes, or that site's equivalent to likes, and on another website I have over 6,500 likes, or that website's equivalent, and I've also had a paid gig from the Reddit No Sleep podcast. So NaNoWriMo. When I was 15 I started writing a trilogy, and for this year's NaNoWriMo I thought I'd try and finish that first book since I'd had most of it planned out already, and they say that your first draft is always terrible, so may as well get it out of the way. I'll start off by saying that this was my first official run at it, but I did not win, and I am not going to win. I stopped at around 17,500 words, which officially puts the work into novella territory, and I would like to continue working on it, but definitely not this November. This is for two main reasons. The first one is that I am not a pantser. In the novel planning world, you plot it or you pants it. That is, you either have a pre-planned idea and a structure to your novel, or you sit down on the 1st of November and you fly by the seat of your pants. I am big on organisation, and I realised partway through that the first act of my book was the most heavily planned, so it was the easiest to write. So I'm going to go back to planning and come back to it later. Secondly, and more importantly, I also started YouTubing at the very start of November and I fell in love. I may well have made most of my word count just by writing scripts for YouTube, and either way I'm really proud of the creative energy that I've put into it, so I don't feel like I've lost out at all. However, if you're watching this and you are doing NaNoWriMo, it's probably the most important thing in your life right now. If you're going to regret not making that last push, you know you need to make that last push. This month is about discipline and commitment to creativity, and I only get out of not winning by having worked on my channel nearly every day. Now let's get on to how I write. How did I get to 17,500 words in just over 2 weeks, and how have I racked up my writing successes on other websites? You may have already heard of the snowflake method, where you start with large details in an overview and then hone in on them, gradually making them more detailed until you come away with a novel. And anyone who's a plotter will be doing this to some extent. But what I actually like to do is what I call chunking. Whichever ideas I think of first, I write them down, no matter what order they're in. It could be the first paragraph, it could be the very last, it could be somewhere in the middle, or I might start at the end and work my way back. Once I have these chunks of the story, I order them loosely into where they'll physically be in the document when I'm done with it. One really good way of doing this is by using Workflowy, which I have been using since my first year of Oxford for writing essays, among other things. It's an organisational godsend, and it's free. If you click here, you'll get an extra 250 bullet points of space when you sign up. Between the points that you have, you can just put insert intro, Becky falls down the mineshaft, and then have a completed chunk either side. I like to put incomplete sections in square brackets. So by this point you have a draft of your story where some parts are in their completed first draft phase and others need to be fleshed out. Whatever you have left to do at this point is all chunks. Go through your story again as many times as you need, in order or not, and go through your normal writing process. So if I sit down and see intro, Becky falls down the mineshaft, I'll be like, well, actually there is a lot more to an intro, so let's pretend we're starting in media res, or that I'm adding another intro chunk before this, so we're just writing the fall. For me, I would then get into a cinematic headspace and try to see the action and describe it, as well as trying to get into the character's head, even if I'm not writing in first person, because what they're feeling is going to affect how they react and how they look, but of course all of that part is entirely down to you. So I keep going through and filling in chunks of whatever's grabbing me about the story on that run through, as well as changing the inserts from something like insert James losing his dog, realising his dad's going to kill him and heading out into the woods to look for it, Maybe there'll be a stroke of imagination and you'll write about how it's late and dark and cold out, but how the dog was his father's prized sheepdog in the family for many generations, so he decides to head out into the woods and gets so scared that he drops his torch and goes off the path. And then before that chunk, you'll just have insert James losing his dog, and then you can come back to that more manageable chunk later and see it and think, maybe James got distracted by something that I can work with as a character flaw, and the dog got away from him, and gradually there'll be fewer chunks to do and smaller chunks to do, or sometimes there'll be more chunks to do if something you write leads somewhere unexpected and interesting. It's all good, and it's easier to look at a small prompt and write a small chunk. And it doesn't even have to be in any order, because any other ideas, even if you don't know where you want them to go yet, just add those chunks or prompts to the bottom and order them in with the rest later. Once you've finished chunking, you've now reached the vault. You now have a finished first draft of your story. What do you do with it? Lock it away for 2 weeks and you're not allowed to look at it. I do this by moving the document from my work in progress folder to the vault. Yep, I actually called the folder the vault because I'm some sort of RPG dork. Of course, you can physically lock it inside a little safe as well if you write on physical paper. But why? In the music industry, it's recommended to leave your own work for a while and then come back to it later with fresh ears, i.e. as though experiencing it for the first time. This is like sharing your story with someone new, except that you don't actually have to share it yet, which is good if you've never done anything like that before. When you come back to it, you can more easily spot parts that don't flow well, typos or grammatical errors, and anything else that doesn't work for you, and you can revise all of those things again in chunking if you like, perhaps by adding a note saying, too fast-paced, insert more of James deciding whether or not to chase the dog in the dark. So what do you then do for those 2 weeks? Well, if you're anything like me, you have a million projects on the go at any one time, so you can just go straight back to working on your first draft for any of those. But you can do anything really. And once you've retrieved it from the vault, well, before I started publishing, I put it into a second section of the vault and left it for another 2 weeks, just to be sure it was perfect to the best of my ability. But you don't have to go overboard if you're already ready to share it with the world or just your friends. As a side note, I don't always follow all of these methods. For some horror stories, I may write them almost entirely from start to finish in one sitting, and I generally don't use the vault anymore, which is bad. I should really self-censor more. So I hope this helped or encouraged some of you to write and share your first pieces. If it did, let me know in the comments. If you have something to share, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please do click here to subscribe, and if you didn't like it, you may as well subscribe too, because the sadomasochistic pleasure derived from watching something you hate is satisfying in itself. So something funny happened lately. I started up a study blur on Tumblr to motivate myself and to clean up my study space, my creative area, and I decided to follow the trends and get some washi tape and some cacti, and the other day Herschel fell out of his pot. Is that a spoiler? And got soil all over the only notes I had ever made and shared to the study blur. And that is why I am bad at study blur and aesthetics and not currently at university.